My daughter-in-law stole my credit card, spent $53,000 by sunrise, and still believed I would be too old, too polite, and too grateful for family to do anything about it. At 6:12 that Tuesday morning, I sat alone in my kitchen in Cedar Falls, Iowa, staring at the laptop screen while my coffee went cold beside my hand. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the little click the furnace made whenever it struggled against the April chill. I had opened my bank account expecting to check whether my pension deposit had cleared. Instead, I found a list of charges so large they looked unreal. $18,700 at a jewelry store in Des Moines. $9,400 for first-class airfare. $21,000 for a resort package in Maui. The rest scattered across designer boutiques, luggage, and something called a private sunset dinner. I read every line twice. Then a third time. My name was at the top of the account, Margaret Whitaker, but every purchase smelled like Brittany. My daughter-in-law had always loved polished things, things that caught light and attention, things she could photograph beside a glass of champagne and call blessings. I could picture her perfectly, standing at a glass counter, tilting her wrist while a salesman fastened a bracelet around it, smiling that soft, practiced smile she used whenever she wanted someone else to feel small for questioning her. My hands did not shake at first. That surprised me. Maybe shock has a quiet stage before it turns into pain. Maybe a woman who has balanced grocery money, medical bills, and family disappointments for nearly 70 years learns not to fall apart the moment the floor cracks. I did not call Brittany. I did not call my son Daniel. I did not even call the number on the back of the card right away. I just sat there, looking at the screen, letting the truth settle into the room with me. The card had been in the small brown wallet I kept in the top drawer of my nightstand, tucked behind Harold's old reading glasses and the envelope of birthday cards I never had the heart to throw away. I had not used it in weeks. I used that card only for emergencies, the kind older women prepare for because nobody else thinks to ask what they might need. A broken water heater, a dental bill, a flight to see family if someone called and said, "Mom, we need you." But Brittany had turned my emergency into her vacation. She had turned my safety into jewelry. And somewhere, maybe still asleep under her expensive sheets, she thought I had not noticed. I finally reached for the printer button. Page 1 slid out slowly. Then page 2. Then page 3. Black ink on white paper, calm as a confession. As each sheet dropped into the tray, I felt something inside me grow still. Not empty. Not broken. Still. Harold used to tell me, "Maggie, never ignore a quiet warning." That morning, the warning was no longer quiet. It had a $sign in front of it. The night before, Brittany had walked into my house carrying an apple pie in a white bakery box and a smile so bright it made me cautious. She hugged me longer than usual, her perfume sweet and expensive against my cheek, and said, "Margaret, this place always feels so cozy." The way she said cozy made my little ranch house sound like something outdated but charming, the kind of place people praise when they would never choose to live there themselves. Daniel came in behind her with his phone already in his hand, distracted, checking messages from clients. He kissed the top of my head the way a busy man pats a dog he once loved as a child. I had made pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, and the buttermilk biscuits Harold used to ask for every Sunday. The table was set for 3, though I had almost set a 4th place by habit. Even after 4 years, some part of me still expected my husband to walk in from the garage, wash his hands at the kitchen sink, and ask why everyone looked so serious. Brittany took off her cream-colored coat and draped it over the back of Harold's old chair without asking. That bothered me more than it should have. I watched the sleeve slide across the polished wood and told myself not to be sensitive. A chair is only a chair. Dinner began pleasantly enough. Brittany praised the roast, asked if I had changed my hair, and told Daniel he was lucky to have a mother who still cooked like that. Still, that word landed quietly on the table. Still cooking, still driving, still living alone, still useful, as if every ordinary thing I did at 69 had to be treated like a small miracle. Halfway through the meal, Daniel noticed the porch light flickering. I mentioned I had been meaning to call someone to replace the bulb because the step got slippery when it rained. He pushed back his chair and said he would handle it before dessert. Brittany immediately stood too. I thought she was going to help clear plates, but instead she pressed a hand to her stomach and said she needed the restroom. I pointed down the hallway to the left. She nodded. Yet a minute later, while I was wrapping biscuits in foil, I heard the soft creak of the floorboards near my bedroom. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. Just one old board complaining under careful weight. I froze with the foil in my hands, listening. Then the hallway went quiet. When Brittany returned, she was smoothing the front of her sweater and smiling like nothing in the world had shifted. After they left, I locked the front door and walked through the house, turning off lamps. My bedroom drawer was not open, not exactly, but it was not closed the way I always closed it. The small brown wallet sat at a slight angle beside Harold's glasses. I looked at it for a long moment, then pushed the drawer shut. I told myself I was imagining things. By morning, I would learn I had been kinder to Brittany in my thoughts than she had ever been to me in her actions. After the printer stopped, I gathered the pages and placed them in a neat stack beside my coffee cup. I did not trust myself to move quickly. Quick movements belong to panic, and panic makes people sloppy. I had spent 28 years working in the front office of a public middle school, balancing petty cash, lunch payments, field trip checks, and the quiet disasters parents brought through the door every morning. I knew the value of a paper trail. I knew the danger of reacting before understanding. So I went upstairs slowly, one hand on the banister, feeling each step under my slippers as if the house itself were asking me to stay calm. My bedroom looked exactly as it always did. The quilt folded at the foot of the bed. The framed photograph of Harold and me at Lake Okoboji on the dresser. The curtains half open, letting pale Iowa sunlight stretch across the carpet. Nothing shouted that I had been betrayed there. That was the cruel thing about certain betrayals. They did not leave broken glass or overturned furniture. They left everything looking normal, so you would question yourself before questioning the person who did it. I opened the top drawer of my nightstand. Harold's reading glasses were still there, the thin gold frames resting on the envelope of old birthday cards. My small brown wallet sat beside them. I lifted it carefully. The emergency credit card was back in its slot, tucked behind my health insurance card, as if it had never been touched. That detail made my stomach tighten. If the card had simply been missing, I might have imagined impulse, confusion, some reckless moment Brittany could later wrap in tears and excuses. But putting it back meant planning. It meant she had entered my room, opened my drawer, taken what was not hers, used it, and returned it with the calm confidence that I would never notice. I sat on the edge of the bed and held the wallet in both hands. The leather was soft from years of use, worn smooth at the corners. Harold had bought it for me one Christmas at a department store in Des Moines. He had tucked a $20 bill inside and said every woman should have something of her own, even inside a marriage. I used to laugh at that. I was not laughing now. Downstairs, the house phone rang. The sound startled me so sharply that I nearly dropped the wallet. I let it ring twice before I answered. It was the fraud department from the credit card company, a woman with a careful, professional voice asking me to verify recent purchases. She listed them one by one, and each number felt colder when spoken aloud. I confirmed only one thing. I had not authorized them. The woman asked whether anyone in my household might have access to the card. I looked toward the hallway where Brittany had walked the night before, past the bathroom, toward my bedroom, carrying her bakery box smile and her soft little lies. For a moment, I almost protected her. Old habits are stubborn. Mothers are trained to keep families from breaking, even when someone else is holding the hammer. Then I looked at Harold's photograph on the wall. I heard his voice in my memory, steady and low. Maggie, truth does not ruin a family. The people hiding from it do. I took a breath and said, yes, someone had access. I gave the woman from the fraud department every answer she needed, but I did not give her Brittany's name yet. Not because I doubted the truth, because I wanted every step after that moment to be clean, careful, and impossible to twist. She froze the card, opened a dispute file, and told me I would receive a packet by mail within 7 to 10 business days. Her voice stayed polite, even kind, but I could hear what she had probably heard hundreds of times before. Family misuse. Familiar access. A trusted person taking advantage because they believe love would be stronger than consequences. When the call ended, I stood in the hallway with the receiver still in my hand. The dial tone hummed against my ear until I placed it back in the cradle. Then I called Daniel. I did not call Brittany. I wanted to hear my son first, before her performance began. He answered on the fourth ring, distracted, with traffic noise in the background. Morning, Mom. Is everything okay? That question almost made me laugh, but there was nothing funny in me. I sat at the kitchen table, the printed statements lined up in front of me like place cards at a dinner nobody wanted to attend. Daniel, I said, keeping my voice level, did Brittany use my credit card by mistake? Silence. Not confusion. Not immediate concern. Silence with weight behind it. I heard him exhale through his nose. What credit card? The emergency card from my nightstand. There are charges on it from yesterday and last night. Jewelry, airfare, a resort package. More than $50,000. Another pause came, longer this time. Then my son said the sentence that changed something between us forever. Mom, let us not make this bigger than it has to be. I looked down at my hands. They were folded neatly on top of the bank papers, the same hands that had packed his lunches, sewn buttons back onto his school shirts, signed his college loan forms, and held his daughter the day she was born. He had not asked if I was all right. He had not asked how frightened I must have been to see that balance. He had not even sounded surprised enough. Daniel, I said quietly, did you know? He rushed in then, words tumbling over each other. No, of course not. I just mean Brittany has been under a lot of pressure lately. The anniversary, Rachel's school expenses, the house renovation, everything. Maybe she borrowed it and planned to tell you. Borrowed, I repeated. It is not borrowing when someone takes a card from a widow's bedroom drawer and returns it before sunrise. He lowered his voice. Mom, please. She is my wife. And I am your mother, I said. The line went quiet again. That quiet told me more than any confession could have. In that silence, I heard every missed Sunday dinner, every holiday Brittany had rearranged, every time Daniel had said maybe next week until next week became another year. He was not choosing the truth. He was choosing the person who made the truth inconvenient. Finally, he said, I will talk to her. Do not call anyone else yet. I looked at the stack of printed pages. I thought of Harold's old reading glasses upstairs, still waiting beside the empty space where trust used to live. I said, I already called the card company. Daniel's voice sharpened. Mom, why would you do that before speaking to us? Because, I answered, my name is on the account. My credit. My money. My life. And for the first time that morning, I heard myself clearly. Not as a lonely mother asking to be believed, but as a woman drawing a line across her own kitchen table. Daniel did not like that line. I could hear it in his breathing. But he had not seen the rest of the papers yet. By noon, the house felt smaller than it had that morning. Not because anything had changed inside it, but because I could feel the walls listening. I made myself a slice of toast, let it sit untouched on a plate, and kept walking back to the printed statements as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something less deliberate. They did not. At 12:47, my tablet chimed on the counter. Rachel's face appeared on the screen before I had even settled into the chair. She was 13 now, all braces and freckles and restless kindness. The only person in Daniel's house who still called me just to tell me about ordinary things. Hi, Grandma, she said, pushing her brown hair behind one ear. Mom is upstairs packing, so I can only talk for a minute. Packing. The word landed softly, but I felt it. Packing for what, sweetheart? Rachel tilted her head, confused in that honest way children have before they learn which family truths are supposed to stay hidden. For the anniversary trip. The fancy one. Mom said you helped with it because she deserved something beautiful after everything she does for this family. I looked at the stack of papers on the table. For a moment, I could hear only the refrigerator humming. Rachel kept talking, innocent and bright. She said you wanted it to be a surprise, and that is why Dad should not worry about the cost. She showed me the resort pictures last night. It has a pool that looks like it goes right into the ocean. I pressed my fingertips against the edge of the table. Not hard. Just enough to keep myself anchored in my own kitchen. What else did your mother say? Rachel shrugged. Just that sometimes people do not appreciate her unless she makes them notice. Then she laughed a little, uncomfortable with her own memory. She said Grandma Margaret finally understands that luxury is not selfish when you have earned it. There it was. Not only the theft, the story around it. Brittany had not simply taken my card and hoped I would miss the charges. She had dressed her actions in my name. She had turned me into the generous old woman funding her reward, while she stood in front of her daughter pretending my money was proof of her own importance. I looked at Rachel's young face and felt the first real ache of the day. Not for the dollars. Not even for the card. For the way lies travel through a family and ask children to carry them without knowing they're. Wait, sweetheart, I said gently. Did your mother tell you I gave her permission to use my card? Rachel's smile faded. She looked toward her bedroom door. I do not know. She just said you were helping. Her voice dropped. Grandma, is something wrong? I wanted to protect her from the answer. I wanted to say no, everything is fine, because that is what grandmothers do. We make cocoa. We mail birthday cards. We pretend adult disappointment is just weather passing through. But I had already protected too many people at my own expense. So I softened the truth, but I did not bury it. I said, there has been a misunderstanding with some money, and I am going to handle it carefully. You are not in trouble, and you did nothing wrong. Rachel nodded, but her eyes had changed. Children know when adults are building fences around a truth. Before she hung up, she whispered, Mom said you would probably be dramatic if you found out. The words were small, almost apologetic. I smiled then, not because I was amused, but because Brittany had made the same mistake so many careless people make with quiet women. She thought restraint was weakness. She thought manners meant surrender. After Rachel ended the call, I opened a manila folder from Harold's old desk and wrote the date on the tab in blue ink. Then I placed the statements inside, one page at a time. Brittany had created a story. Now I was going to create a record. The next morning, I put on my gray wool coat. The one Harold used to say made me look like I was about to negotiate with the school board, and drove 12 minutes across town to Cedar Falls Community Bank. The sky was low and pale, the kind of Iowa spring morning that cannot decide whether it wants to be winter again. I parked near the front entrance and sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. In the passenger seat, Harold's old leather document bag rested upright, filled with printed statements, a copy of my identification, and the small brown wallet sealed inside a plastic storage bag. It looked excessive, maybe even silly, but careful women are often called dramatic by people who benefit from their silence. Inside, the bank smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and coffee. Linda Carver looked up from her desk near the window and froze when she saw me. We had known each other for 30 years, first through church fundraisers, then through the middle school, where her grandson once forgot lunch money twice a week. She had retired from banking, then returned part-time because, as she put it, she was not built to sit at home arguing with daytime television. Margaret, she said, standing before I reached her desk. What happened? That was the difference between Linda and my son. She did not ask as if my problem was an inconvenience. She asked as if my answer mattered. I placed the folder on her desk. I need to understand exactly how someone got into my account. Her face changed as she opened the first page. Not shock, not pity. Focus. She put on her reading glasses and began moving through the papers with a banker's patience. One page, then another, then another. When she reached the account notification settings, her finger stopped. Margaret, did you add a second email address to your profile? I leaned forward. No, I only use my main email. She turned the monitor slightly, shielding it with her hand out of habit. There it was, an address I had never seen before, made from Brittany's initials and a number I recognized from Daniel's home address. It had been added 3 months earlier, the week after Easter. My mouth went dry. Easter. I could see that afternoon clearly. Brittany sitting beside me on the couch, holding my phone, telling me I needed the bank app because paper statements were old-fashioned and risky. She had smiled at Daniel and said, "We have to keep Margaret safe." I remembered feeling grateful. I remembered thanking her. Linda printed the change history, then lowered her voice. Whoever added this email could receive alerts, password notices, and certain account updates. Not full access by itself, but enough to watch your habits. Enough to know when I was not looking, I said. Linda did not answer right away. She did not need to. She printed 3 more pages and slid them across the desk. There were small charges I had never noticed because they had been paid off before the monthly statement closed. A spa in Waterloo. A handbag boutique in Chicago. A travel membership trial. Nothing large enough to frighten me at the time. Just little tests. Little fingerprints. I sat very still while the fluorescent lights hummed above us. Brittany had not made one reckless mistake. She had studied me. She had practiced on me. She had learned where I kept my trust and how quietly she could spend it. Linda reached across the desk and touched the edge of my folder, not my hand, just the folder, as if she understood I needed dignity more than comfort. You need more than a dispute, she said. You need your lawyer. I called Howard Bennett from the parking lot of the bank, with Linda's printed pages resting on my lap and the heater blowing warm air against my knees. His office was still in the same brick building downtown, above a pharmacy that had been there since before Daniel was born. Howard had handled Harold's will, our house papers, and the small trust Harold created after his second heart procedure because he said a man should not leave his wife with questions when he could leave her with instructions. Howard answered on the second ring, his voice older than I remembered but still steady. "Margaret," he said, and somehow just hearing my name spoken without impatience made my throat tighten. I told him I needed an appointment that day. I did not explain everything over the phone. Some truths deserve a closed door, a wooden desk, and a witness who understands the weight of paper. By 3 o'clock, I was sitting across from him in his office, watching him read the bank records through half-moon glasses. The room smelled of leather books and lemon polish. Harold used to sit in the chair beside mine, one ankle crossed over his knee, asking careful questions while I pretended legal language did not make my head ache. That chair was empty now. Howard did not rush. He read the statements, the email change history, the small earlier charges, the dispute notes, and the page where I had written Rachel's exact words from memory. When he finished, he removed his glasses and set them on the desk. "Margaret," he said quietly, "this was not an accident." I know. Saying it aloud did not make it easier, but it made it cleaner. He opened a file cabinet behind him and pulled out a thick folder labeled Whitaker Family Trust. I had seen that folder before, but I had never asked about every page inside it. Harold trusted Howard, and I had trusted Harold. Howard placed one document in front of me and turned it so I could read the marked section. "Your husband added this clause 2 years before he passed," he said. He insisted on it. I looked down at the words, formal and dry, but they carried Harold's voice beneath them. "Any beneficiary who financially exploits, coerces, or deliberately misuses Margaret Whitaker's assets may have distributions suspended pending review by the trustee." I read the sentence twice. Then I pressed my palm flat on the page, not to claim it, but to steady myself. Harold had seen what I had refused to see. Maybe not Brittany specifically, but the possibility. The way people become bold around widows. The way kindness can look like weakness to someone hungry enough. "Why did he never tell me?" I asked. Howard leaned back with a sad little sigh. He hoped it would never matter. He wanted your family to treat you well because they loved you, not because a clause frightened them. I looked toward the window, where late afternoon light caught the dust in the air. For years, I had thought protection meant someone standing in front of me. Harold had done something quieter. He had left a lock on a door I did not know others were planning to open. Howard slid a legal pad toward me. "We will document everything," he said. "We will notify the trustee, preserve the bank records, and request merchant verification. If she tries to call this a misunderstanding, we will answer with dates, receipts, and access logs." I nodded. No tears came. Not then. I signed the authorization forms with my full name, Margaret and Whitaker, each letter slow and even. When Howard handed me copies, I placed them in Harold's leather bag beside the bank records. By the time I left his office, the sky over Main Street had turned the color of old silver. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Daniel and 1 text from Brittany. It said, "We need to talk before this gets ugly." I stood on the sidewalk, reading those 7 words, and felt a calm so sharp it almost felt like mercy. Ugly had already happened. She was only afraid it was about to become visible. By Friday evening, Brittany had decided the best way to control the story was to turn it into a celebration. She sent a group message saying she and Daniel wanted everyone to meet at Bellini's, the Italian restaurant in Des Moines where they had held their 10th anniversary dinner, because families should not let misunderstandings ruin special moments. I read the message while standing at my kitchen sink, washing the same coffee cup for longer than necessary. Misunderstanding. That was the word she had chosen for a stolen card, altered account notices, and a trip paid for with money I had saved for emergencies. It was a soft word, the kind people use when they want a sharp thing wrapped before anyone sees the blade. I arrived at Bellini's 10 minutes early wearing my navy dress, low heels, and Harold's pearl earrings. In my left hand, I carried my purse. In my right hand, I carried Harold's leather document bag. The hostess led me to a round table near the window, where Brittany had already arranged herself like the evening's centerpiece. Her blonde hair was curled neatly over one shoulder. Her nails were pale pink, and on her wrist sat a diamond bracelet that caught the restaurant lights every time She lifted her glass. I recognized it from the receipt before I recognized it as jewelry. $18,700 had a certain sparkle when someone else was wearing it. Daniel sat beside her, stiff in a white dress shirt, avoiding my eyes. Rachel sat between them, quiet, with a menu open in front of her though she was not reading it. Brittany smiled when she saw me. "Margaret, I am so glad you came." Her voice was warm enough for nearby tables to believe it. I placed my document bag beside my chair and sat down slowly. "Of course," I said. "Family should talk face to face." Her smile flickered, just once. Dinner began with bread, olive oil, and the kind of small talk people use to step around a hole in the floor. Brittany spoke about the weather, Rachel's school project, Daniel's busy listings, and how stressful the past week had been for everyone. For everyone. I watched her wrist move as she reached for her water. The bracelet flashed again. Daniel cleared his throat and said, "Mom, Brittany, and I think this has gotten out of hand." I looked at him, waiting. He continued, "There was confusion, and we are willing to help straighten it out, but involving banks and lawyers makes it feel like you do not trust us." I folded my napkin once in my lap. "Daniel, trust is not something people can demand after they spend it." Brittany set down her glass a little too carefully. "Margaret, I would never intentionally hurt you. You know that." I turned to her then. For the first time all evening, I let my eyes rest fully on her face. No anger, no raised voice, just attention that seemed to unsettle her more than shouting would have. She touched the bracelet, perhaps without realizing it. Then, as dessert menus arrived, she lifted her glass and gave a small laugh. "I just want to say I am grateful for family generosity, even when family does not always understand how much pressure I carry." The table went still. Rachel looked down. Daniel closed his eyes. I opened Harold's leather bag and removed one cream envelope. I placed it in the center of the table, beside the basket of bread nobody had finished. "Then let us talk about generosity," I said. "And let us begin with whose card paid for the bracelet on your wrist." Brittany's face changed in stages. First came the little offended smile, the one she used when she wanted people to think I had misunderstood something simple. Then came the blink, slow and careful, as her eyes dropped to the envelope on the table. Finally, there was the color draining from her cheeks when I opened it and placed the first receipt beside her water glass. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light again, but now it no longer looked elegant. It looked like evidence. Daniel reached for the paper, but I placed my hand over it before he could take it. "No," I said quietly. "You will listen first." The restaurant around us continued with its soft music and clinking silverware, but our table had become its own weather system, cold and airless. I removed the next page. The resort confirmation. Then the airfare. Then the account change history Linda had printed for me, showing the email Brittany had added after Easter. Brittany whispered, "Margaret, this is not what it looks like." I looked at her wrist. Then I looked back at her. It is exactly what it looks like. Daniel stared at the papers, his mouth slightly open. For once, he had no smooth explanation ready. I turned one page toward him, the one with the smaller charges from the months before. A spa, a handbag boutique, a travel membership, little tests, Daniel. She wanted to know how much she could take before I noticed. Brittany's eyes shone with sudden tears, but they came too quickly, too perfectly. She reached for Daniel's sleeve. "I was overwhelmed," she said. "I thought Margaret wanted to help us. You told our daughter I was paying for your luxury trip because you deserved it," I said. Rachel flinched at the word daughter, and Brittany's hand dropped from Daniel's sleeve. That was when I softened my voice, not for Brittany, but for the girl sitting between two adults who had forgotten she was still learning what love was supposed to look like. "Rachel, none of this is your fault. You heard something you should never have been asked to carry." Her eyes filled, and she nodded once. Daniel finally looked at me. "Mom, we can fix this." I almost smiled at the word we. There had been no we when I was staring at the charges alone in my kitchen. No we when he told me not to make it bigger. No we when Brittany used my name to dress up her greed. I took one final document from the envelope and placed it on top of the stack. "Howard Bennett has already notified the trustee. The bank dispute is active. The card is frozen. The merchants have been contacted. The trip will not happen under my account, and the jewelry purchase is part of the investigation." Brittany pushed back from the table as if the chair had become uncomfortable beneath her. "You cannot do that to family," she said. I looked at her for a long moment. Family does not sneak into a widow's bedroom and call it generosity. Daniel closed his eyes again, but this time I did not feel the old instinct to comfort him. He was a grown man. He could sit with the truth he had avoided. I gathered the papers, slid them back into Harold's leather bag, and stood. The bracelet still glittered on Brittany's wrist, but she kept her hand tucked under the table now. Outside, the Des Moines evening had turned cool, and a thin wind moved along the sidewalk. I paused by my car and looked back through the restaurant window. Daniel was staring at the table. Brittany was crying into a napkin. Rachel was looking straight at me. I lifted my hand gently to her, just once. Then I got into my car, placed Harold's bag on the passenger seat, and drove back towards Cedar Falls with the heater on and the radio low. I had not recovered every dollar yet. I had not repaired my family. But for the first time in years, I no longer felt like a guest in my own life. I had drawn the line, signed my name beneath it, and walked away before anyone could move it.